Hello and welcome to PlayIPredict.com. This show, with four-time All-Ireland winner Sean The Bawn of Sullivan, is brought to you in conjunction with Handsome Trouble. Your shoe, your way. So here we are, Sean O'Sullivan. I didn't realise, I have to say, do my research for you, how many Sean O'Sullivans there were in the whole world. It's a common name, isn't it? I thought it was just Kerry Cork, but it seems to go further afield.
Yeah. Well, I know that. Not that I'd be googling myself or anything, Jonathan, but people have told me that there's definitely a snooker player, because he followed me on Twitter, believe it or not, and I followed him back, and he sent me a DM. Oh, this is going back a couple of years ago. He's not probably one of the better known snooker players, but we just had a bit of a laugh on Twitter over it. So I know him. You came across another few, did you?
Yeah, there was a Dragon's Den. There's an investor.
Yes, that's
think
right.
There was a Stromler as well.
I haven't heard of him.
I just don't know how you managed to put it all together. Where do you get the time?
Well, my bank balance certainly doesn't reflect it anyway, I can tell you that.
The Kerry man with bank balance.
I've heard of the Dragon's Den guy, all right, but the astronomer now doesn't ring a bell. But yeah, look, obviously O'Sullivan is a very popular name down around these parts. During my Kerry days, it was crazy. You had, in that team of the noughties, you had Tom Sullivan, you had Darren O'Sullivan, you had Declan O'Sullivan, you had Sean O'Sullivan. So there was no shortage of them. So yeah, very popular down here, but still very easy to distinguish between us, Jonathan. I can believe you me, very easy.
I don't know about that now. I said the postman has a few nightmares at times. And any new postman coming in, I guess that's where the Sean Bawn came from. Then is it? Is that some sort of identification?
Yeah, that's a funny one, actually. I suppose it goes back to my minor days. So most young fellas would have done their leaving cert and couldn't wait to head off to college. I was the opposite, actually. I finished school rather early. I finished school at 17. And I just felt that college wasn't for me straight away. So I accepted my course in the LIT, Limerick Institute of Technology, a business course. But I deferred it for a year, and I worked in a local financial company here in Killorglin, very famous company now, actually, Fexico. And I worked for the Western Union money transfer section of that. I had worked there during school anyway, part-time and on holidays, but I accepted a full one-year contract there before I headed to college. But I worked with a guy there who, for some reason, thought that the fact that Bawn rhymed with Sean was a pretty easy way to go. So he christened me Sean Bawn, and so that was my year. I was a Kerry minor in '98. So it actually, other fellas were coming into the Kerry minor squad, coming straight to training after secondary school, or they had been home for their dinner and they were going off to training, whereas I was actually working a full-time job. So I think it was actually a pivotal year in my development, Jonathan, because it allowed me the flexibility of so I'd work, say, on a Saturday and I'd get a day off during the week. So it allowed me a rest day during the week, if you get me, that most other guys wouldn't have had because they'd be going to school, they had to be up early for school, where I had a rest day. Strength and conditioning wasn't even really a big thing at that time, but I remember, on my day off during the week, I'd get a little body weight work done that maybe other guys wouldn't have. So it really, I think, looking back on that year where I took off college and took the year out to work, it definitely brought me on physically. Obviously, look, I was 18, so I was growing into a man anyway, but certainly I found that year very beneficial in terms of getting fitter. I was doing an extra bit of running work on my own that I wouldn't have been doing inside with the Kerry Miners. So looking back, it was a good year for me. But yeah, that work colleague of mine decided that Sean Bawn was a good one. So, and it's, unfortunately, in some ways, it's stuck, as most nicknames do.
Well, judging by that dressing room alone, you're lucky you didn't have names on the back of the shirts like you do in football, because the kit men, there's 3 or 4 of you there. But it is fascinating, and even it's one of the things that I'd like to kind of, I suppose, extract a bit more from, in this series of interviews that we're doing, because look, there's a lot of, interviews out there and what you read in the papers and their various platforms, and they're more shorter, and it's more like you hear the news stories and opinion on the news stories. I'm just a bit more fascinated to get inside the mind really of the series. Like you're 4-time All-Ireland winner. I know that might be standard in Kerry, but it's very much not the standard outside the Kerry. It's a huge achievement, and even it's fascinating to note, even from your early days there, like that extra couple of runs that you do and those extra couple of rounds of circuits or whatever, even at that stage where the game hadn't been as an advanced really, in terms of, it'd be different, I'd say, if you were 18 now and doing minor training at the moment. We'll discuss a bit more on that later on, but even still, you had that extra, I need to do this extra couple of percent to get an advantage.
Yeah, well, I'll never forget one of those Saturdays that I was supposed to be working. We had a challenge game with the minors, and I had to get some time off work to go to it, but I was coming back to work again after, and one of the selectors was a guy called Junior Murphy from Carsabeen, really, really good man, very experienced, knew his football. And I remember the same day, this was one of the very early challenge games now in the year with the minors, and I was struggling, not from an ability point of view, because I knew inside in my own head that I wouldn't be in there if I didn't have the ability, or if Charlie Nelligan, who was the trainer at the time, didn't see anything in me, I wouldn't even have been close to it. But I did struggle fitness-wise, because you can imagine I was coming from a small rural club where there wasn't much emphasis on fitness. It was just show up and play your game, show up to a couple of training sessions during the week, and that was it really. But I really struggled. I think we played Laois up in Limerick, and anyway, Junior was dropping me back to work after in Kilorglin, and as I was getting out of the car, he just grabbed me by the shoulder as I was getting out, and he said, "You're going to have to get fitter, Sean. It's as simple as that. You're going to have to get fitter, or you'll be left behind." And like you're talking about a minor team that included Ty Kennelly, Owen Brosnan, Mark O'Shea, Aidan O'Mahony. So you were looking around the dressing room. Obviously, Tig had already played minor the year before, but when you're down in Kerry and you're playing minor football, you hear of the Mark O'Sheas and you hear of the Owen Brosnans and these guys. And I was looking at these fellas, and they were a lot stronger, fitter than me. And I vowed to myself going back into work that day, I said, I'm just going to have to do something about this. So that was why I dedicated those extra days I had off to just getting fitter, aerobically fitter, Jonathan. It wasn't so much that I had to be this big beast of a man for minor football, but I just needed to get aerobically fitter, and I just worked hard on this. And I just knew that the amount of talent inside in a 25, 30 man Kerry minor squad, if I didn't do that, then, as Junior said, I was going to be left behind, because there was another guy there ready to step in and take my place, So I worked hard on it, and I would have been very, very quick. Speed would have been a huge asset of mine. So I didn't worry about that. It was just the more long
Gotcha.
distance endurance stuff that I needed to get better at, that I wasn't running out of gas, at half time or maybe 40 minutes into a game, which was that was, it was happening. So once I got my head around that, I made my mark with the minors, and I ended up having a decent year, even though we lost to the aforementioned Laois in the All-Ireland semi-final in Croke Park. But I knew that I had got myself to a fitness base and played well, that I could drive on from there. But it just took that little bit of a clip around the ear from a selector to say, listen, if you don't change this, it's not going to work for you. And I'm so glad he did.
It's almost like the light switch moment, that where I suppose mentally it probably got you better prepared as well. You probably didn't know it at the time, but definitely probably got you more focused on the zone, really, if you want to call it.
Absolutely. And it's not like I was living a bad lifestyle or anything. I was living at home. I was working in the next town over. Nights out were few and far between. You were a young fella still, obviously, going out and experimenting with the social side of things, should I say. But at the back of my mind, it was always Kerry football. Always Kerry football. And look, it even got to a selfish point of view. I missed, friends' birthdays. Girlfriends or girlfriend wouldn't have been too happy with me at the time, but it was just pure and utter Kerry football. It's funny, actually. I was only the other day, I suppose, just to give you a scene of what it's like down here, like maybe most rural places. I have my parents living next door to me. I have my sister on one side and my brother's across the way. And my parents recently moved into a new house, and my brother moved into the old house across the road. And my mother was clearing up, and she found some scrapbooks that she would have kept of my earlier days. And I just happened to flick through them the other day, and at the back of one of them was just a page dedicated to me as a small fella. So you're talking 5, 6, 7 years of age. And I was in nothing but a Kerry outfit. I mean, not even just the jersey. I mean, you're talking socks pulled up to the knee, shorts, the whole lot. There wasn't a picture in the page, on the page where I wasn't in a Kerry kit. So it was there. It was all I always wanted to play for Kerry, and that little bit of a talking to, and as you said, that little bit of a, I suppose, the light bulb moment from that selector was huge. It was huge, and from there on in, it was just one way I was going, and that was to try and play for Kerry as many times as I could.
It's probably a difficult question for you to answer, but it's something I know I'm personally fascinated about. Like you obviously you grew up in Kerry, which is the kingdom of football, and you would have seen just All Ireland after All Ireland after Ireland, which you probably wouldn't get.
Not I didn't, because if you think about it, I was born in 1980.
Okay.
And Kerry beat Roscommon in 80. And the first All Ireland I remember watching, well, half watching actually, was 1986 against Tyrone. And if you remember that All Ireland, Tyrone absolutely dominated Kerry in the first half, and things were looking very, very bad at half time. My mother and father were at the game, so my grandmother, God rest her, my father's mother, was looking after us. And I went in behind the couch at half time, and I wouldn't come out. I just would not come out. And all of a sudden, I think it was Pat Spillane scored a flying goal. He flew through the air and punched the ball into the net. And there was a big yelp from my grandmother. And slowly but surely,
I was back out then.
Well, I was like a meerkat. I was sticking the head up to every. Then Mikey Sheehy scored a great goal to turn the tide for Kerry. So, but that was my last All Ireland seeing Kerry win, Jonathan, until I stood in the Canal End in '97 when they beat Mayo.
It just seems fascinating, though, doesn't it? Like, I guess it's more the names that you're rhyming off then, maybe a little era prior to that. But you're definitely growing up in a county that's football mad and has a serious culture of winning.
Crazy, and that's why that famine, in inverted commas, which it was for us in Kerry, was just so difficult to take year after year. And I mean, my memories of going into Killarney and up to Páirc Uí Chaoimh with my father and my late uncle Patrick, who would have been a big influence on my career. I might talk about him later, but seeing Maurice Fitzgerald kick 10, 11 pints and still end up on a losing team, driving down that old road from Cork down to Kerry again, it got harder and harder to take. And I mean, we did have there was a few chinks of light. They won in 91. And again, when Paddy O'Shea came on board, then they started to turn things around. But it was tough to take until, of course, 97 and that win over Mayo kind of started the that golden generation again of Kerry teams. I think it all started really in 96 with that under-21 team who beat Cavan in Thurles. Even I was at that game, and to win that under-21 final for Kerry was absolutely massive. Like, it was, because you knew, like, I was only 16, but you knew that was your next crop of seniors, and that these guys had the ability to possibly end that 11-year wait for an All-Ireland, and the following year they did,
Well, if that's a famine, I'll show you some famines. High standards.
Well,
it probably proves the point I'm trying to say. But do you think there's any difference between you're a young lad, grew up football obsessed? You've described the photographs of the 5-year-old fully decked out, and I'm sure if there was more smartphones, etc., around the time, there'd be bucket loads more photographs. You sound like a kid that grew up football obsessed and had one dream, what you wanted to fulfill. Do you think that's any difference, though, from somebody, say, just up the road in County Clare? And obviously there's hurling there as well, but other counties, what makes the difference? I'm just curious to see, like, because obviously location is a certain factor, but what else is it? What defines the difference, really? Or can you explain that?
Look, a lot of people will obviously point to tradition and Dukas, as they call it down here, and I know there's been a lot of poems written about it and so on. And of course it is. It tradition has to count for something, and it counts for a lot. But I think a lot of it has to do, Jonathan, with just the line of development. You know, what is each county doing, you know, to reap the talent? You know, the kids are going to pick up a ball. Do you know what I mean? It's, you know, I mean, you put a ball, I have 3 young fellas here at home, you put a ball in front of them, they're going to pick it up, they're going to kick it, they're going to do something with it, you know. But, you know, where does it go from there? You know, what age do they start going up to the local field, just kicking around? If there is talent in them, how is that harnessed through the club? If they're one of those players that maybe makes it to the next level, you know, where does he go? He's a very good under 14, 15, 16 minor. Where's his next step? Is there development squad systems? So every county, okay, they're going to have it in different numbers. Of course they are, depending on, as you said, location and the geographical aspect of things. But even if the numbers are small or big, where's the next step for them, and where's the next phase? And I think that's where Kilkenny get it right, Kerry get it right. Obviously, Dublin are getting it right now. And look, we can go into the money side of things there if we want to. But again, I'm very slow to come down on Dublin in terms of money, because it's fine having the money, but you have to spend the money correctly, and you have to get the right people, you know, coaching and developing these players. But that's where the counties that I've just mentioned got it right, and that's where they reap the rewards from in terms of their success. You know, you mentioned a county like Clare. You know, there's been some very good footballers out of Clare, and I'm sure there was probably many more. But where was the next step for them? You know, was that line of development there in Clare to bring these guys and girls to the next level? Obviously, hurling plays a big part there. Of course, it does. So maybe the lines of development were focused on hurling and not on football. You know, and you know, a team like Clare, or a county like Clare, there'll be one day in the sun for them. And obviously they got their day in 92 when they beat Kerry. But those days won't be replicated, because it was a flash in the pan. The system just wasn't there to sustain it. Whereas in Kerry and Kilkenny, you have your schools, you have your development squads. That's where it comes from. So it's hard to explain why, you know, Kerry is regarded as the home of football, or Kilkenny is regarded as the home of hurling. But when you delve actually into it, it's there really in front of you. They spend so much time in putting these roadmaps, for want of a better word. It's the buzzword at the moment, for young footballers and hurlers, that they're not just maybe, you know, they get to a certain point of their career and it's like, okay, we'll just hurl away or football away, play football. There's an end game to it, and you know, throw in that then with a lot of it has to do with your family. Like, you know, we were just stone mad about football here. There was nothing else to do really, and from a young age I was out the back kicking with my father, kicking with my uncle, and that's how you develop the love for it. And then all of a sudden you're into you're under eights at the club, and it takes off from there. But it can be explained. Sometimes it's hard to explain to people why these places are so embedded in football, hurling, whatever it may be. But when you actually dig deep down into it, it's not, because it's set up for you to go on if you have the ability and if you have the commitment, you know.
Yeah, well, look, you've actually educated me a lot there in that last couple of minutes. But just thinking as well, like, you've got that, I won't say clip across the ear from the selector at the time coming back to work. He obviously was a huge influence in your career. It sounds like as well, judging by what you said, your family as well, they must have been a big influence on your both personal and your footballing career.
They were, yeah. My father would be a quiet man. He would never have, you know, you know, been roaring or shouting at me at games, or telling me what to do, or the other thing. I think one vivid memory stands out of my father ever really having a stern word in my ear was I I was playing with, actually, I think it was around the time of the Kerry Minors. And I mentioned earlier about how I suppose at 17 and 18, Jonathan, you know, we've all been there. Your head gets turned maybe for a night out or something like that. And I would have been usually pretty good, but there was one particular night where I accepted a friend's invitation to go into Killorglin for a night out. And I was late getting home, but we were playing a challenge match the next day with the minors against the Kerry junior team, actually. And my father was given the job of driving me into the game and home again. It usually would have been my mother. I'm not sure why he was given the job, but I was absolutely shambolic. I couldn't. And it's not like I was hungover or anything. I actually was very well behaved the night before, but it was a late night. Probably didn't get home till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just. Everything I did in that game was wrong, and the drive home was a quiet one right until we got to the church here in Cremon, actually, which is just up the road. And just as we turned down the road, he said, "Look, I'm only going to say this once." He said, "You can't do what you did last night and try and play football the next day. It just doesn't work, like, you know." And he said, "I don't want to know where you're drinking. It's not. I don't want to know that, but you just can't do it." And again, similar to the Kerry minor selector, it was a light bulb moment like that, you know, said, listen, if you want to compete, you know, I had dreams of playing for the Kerry seniors, and I could hardly kick the ball straight for the Kerry minors. I mean, where was I going, you know? But it was a moment where I said, if you want to get anywhere near where you feel you can go, you're going to have to make a few adjustments in your life, you know. But he would have been very quiet. My Uncle Patrick would have been a lot more, I suppose, you know, we all have that uncle who he's not your dad, but he
get away with saying a bit more.
exactly. He's a very close second, and he would have been a lot more into where I can improve. Like, he was the first man who said that I really needed to go and practice with both feet, you know, and I ended up taking that advice so on board so much that I've actually down through the years probably got stronger off my left foot than my right foot, you know. He was the guy who, you know, he spent a long time in America, so he would have taken a big interest in the NFL. I think I mentioned to him before, he was a big Jets fan. So he would have been bringing a lot back of, you know, getting the body right and, you know, working on your overhead catch and going up to the field with the balls and kicking at the post. He would have been big into that, you know, whereas my father wouldn't have been throwing that advice at me, but anything he said was still, you know, very much to the point and taken on board. So they were the two guys who, as I mentioned earlier, I would have been travelling up to Cork, you know, to see Kerry play Cork and Páirc Uí Chaoimh. We would have got out in Cork and had our tea and our sandwiches, like I'm sure you did as a young fella.
Absolutely.
And got into the game and hoped against hope that Kerry would eventually win. And you, more often than not, unfortunately, during that period, we'd come down with our tail between our legs. But that wouldn't stop you from going again the following year, you know.
Absolutely. And just another small thing, I like the Kerry, I suppose, club set up and the way the championship set up always seems a little, probably perfectly normal to you guys, but it always comes across a little strange to me. But just on that as well, do you think, like, obviously you're from a rural kind of, I suppose, club in Cremon there, do you think that your club bearing has, like, you always hear the stories about people from the county champions or the bigger clubs get picked and it's easier for them to make development squads, minors, under 16 minor squads, etc. Do you think that can be an impact, obviously? Because the one thing that struck to mind is it seemed to have a very close-knit setup there. Even your club's Twitter page mentions you and Donncha Walsh as being their club, All-Ireland winners, and you can see how much that means. Do you think that has an impact growing up, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the important thing for me growing up was, and I think it's a crucial thing in Kerry, and you've hit the nail on the head. That whatever club you come from shouldn't be a factor on whether or not you play for Kerry. And I think Kerry have proved that. I mean, you know, you can go through even that great squad that I was lucky to be part of in the noughties. You know, I mean, there was guys stretching the length and breadth of the county, you know, and more importantly, stretching the length and breadth of the county league, which would be, our main. It wouldn't be our main competition down here, but it's a good barometer of where your club sits in terms of the pecking order in Kerry football, should I say. So, I mean, I come from a club, and Dunica has come from a club that we've bounced between Division 5 and 4 for since I've played Cremon Senior. We've never gone higher, and I mean, that's gone back to, I played when I was 16, so we're going back to 1996, You have guys like Declan O'Sullivan, who would have, again, been down in Division 4 a long time with Drummond. Now Declan, in fairness, they got a good crop of players together and they pushed up the divisions. Killian Young would play with Renard, again, bounced between 4 and 5 for as long as I can remember. So it just goes to show you that it doesn't really matter where you're playing your football. If you're good enough and you're committed enough, you can play for Kerry. Absolutely, though, without a doubt, it helps. It definitely helps if you can get onto the county championship shop window.
Okay.
And obviously, for me to do that, or for Dunica to do that, Cremon don't play in the county championship, so we obviously amalgamate with 5 other clubs and play for Mid Kerry, which would be our divisional team. And I've no doubt that it was probably through there that we would have been seen in a county championship setting, and the county championship in Kerry is a really good, as I said, shop window for the Kerry management and selectors to see who's out there. But again, a lot of it has to come down to maybe how you've performed through the levels coming up. You mentioned development squads. They weren't a huge thing when I was younger. They've obviously got a lot more better and more serious. I was involved with them myself for about 7 years. They're a fantastic stepping stone for young players. But if you were lucky to come through onto a Kerry minor squad and then an under-21 squad, you were making a name for yourself as you went along. And
absolutely.
Kerry senior managers and management were always keeping an eye on those, But it's a great thing in Kerry that, I'm from Cremon. I had nobody before me as such. We did have links to Kerry teams way back before our club was only officially formed in 1983. So I had nobody blazing a trail for me, should I say, in terms of making a senior county team. So I took a lot of pride, actually. I take a lot of pride in it now. At the time, I really wouldn't have been taking much notice of those things because you're so in the moment and you're so, right, I've played Kerry minor. What's the next step, But looking back now, actually, at 40 years of age, you get a great sense of pride that you were the first Cremon man to play for the Kerry minors under-21 senior. Do you know what I mean? And then, of course, Dunica came along and, I suppose, in a way, and myself and Dunica have spoken about this, it helped Dunica in a way. Not that he wasn't going to make it because he was a sensational underage player, always was going to play for Kerry. But it helped that maybe I had gone before him and put the name of Cremon out there a little bit,
Precedent was set to a certain extent.
Exactly. And it just proved that just because we're a Division 5 team who play junior championship football doesn't mean we can't produce 2 All-Ireland winners, And I think that, that should really be the template all over the country. Again, going back to your point about the geographical side of things, smaller counties will obviously have to pick from smaller, numbers and clubs. But certainly in Kerry, it's a case of if you're good enough, it doesn't matter where you're from. If you can offer something, you'll play. And I think that's what we proved, certainly,
Absolutely. But I suppose for me, I think I touched on it there, that the Kerry club set up and then the way you've it set up divisional, it confuses me from the outset. But when you broke it down there, it actually, it makes a lot of sense. And, you've given the opportunity for people from, rural teams, smaller teams are now on the shop window, as you said. So it gives a big opportunity because sometimes we're all guilty of it from looking in from abroad. What are those lads down there? Would they not just do a normal club championship where each one plays each other? But when you break it down, there's definitely a lot of pros for it, isn't there?
Well, there is, because I mean, if I didn't have my divisional board team Mid Kerry playing at such a high standard in the county championship, I would we won it in 2008. I would never have had a chance to win a county championship because Cremon would have had to climb up through junior, intermediate, senior, win a senior before you could even contemplate, going on your own in the county championship, which is never going to happen. And look, on the flip side of that, take a team like Dr. Crokes, who have dominated the Kerry County Championship in the last decade and a half, probably. Okay, so if they are producing top quality players who are producing it year in, year out on a county championship level, then of course they should be in the Kerry setup. I mean, and you go through the Dr. Crokes, and I'm only using Crokes here as an example, you go through the Dr. Crokes players who have represented Kerry in the last 10 years. I mean, Colm Cooper, Owen Brosnan, Johnny Buckley, right up to present day, Gavin White, Micheál Burns. These guys are all quality footballers. You know what I mean? It's not because they're from Dr. Crokes and they've won a county championship. It helps, of course it does. But for me, it proves that they can do it at the highest level. They're all match winners. They've all produced it year in, year out. They must have 5 or 6 county championship medals. I don't know how many the Gooch has. I'd say he's lost count at this stage. But they've proved that they can do it. So if they can do it at that level, of course they should get a shot with Kerry. You know what I mean? It's I don't get that argument, that because they've won the county championship, they're automatically brought in. It doesn't work like that. Yes, they've won the county championship. They've won the county championship because they're good players. And if they're good players at the highest level within the county, then by all means they should be given a chance, at least inside in a county setup. And those guys have proved that they're even beyond that, and they can go on to even higher level. I mean, Colm Cooper, Owen Brosnan, these guys, they've all proved that. And if they had come from another club in the county,
absolutely,
they would have made it anyway.
Very true. Well, look, I suppose I can't go past your club career without mentioning, you're probably going to kill me for saying this, your age, and you're still playing. The James Milner of the setup or something, is it?
Well, did I mention I had 3 young fellas here, Jonathan? So
okay.
You need some outlet to get out of the house. No, look, I suppose, how do I put it? Yeah, like I'm 40 since January, but and look, I'm knocking on wood here in front of me. I was very, very lucky that throughout my career I had no serious injury, really. I mean, I had your usual. I mentioned my pace earlier being my biggest asset. Really, there was the hamstring problems that come with having fast twitch muscles and doing a lot of sprints, but nothing ever too serious. Quad muscle injuries, maybe. The biggest injury I ever had was I broke my ankle in a club game a week before my wedding. Believe it or not, so I was on crutches for my big day. But anyway, the less said about that,
I was going to say, can we push you on that a bit more?
Yeah, it was just one of those things. I had to play. If it had been a county league game, I probably would have left it. But it was a championship match with the club, so I had to play. But I know Mary told me going out the door to mind my face for the photographs the following week, and we laughed about it. And of course, my face was fine, but I landed home in the back of a friend's car with crutches. She thought it was a joke at first, but unfortunately it wasn't. But my point is that the body hasn't suffered a lot. And I suppose I look back at my Kerry career too, Jonathan, and unfortunately, I didn't maybe rack up as many games as I would have liked to. I did play quite a few games and came on as a sub in a lot of games, but unfortunately there was a lot of games where I didn't see action. So even though I was doing full seasons of training, I wasn't putting up the mileage in games that maybe I would have liked to. So when I came out of my Kerry career, I was still relatively. Do you know where I'm coming from?
I was a bit of life in the tank still. Yeah,
and I wasn't fed up with football. I see some guys coming out of their inter-county careers and they don't go near the club because they're either they're fed up with playing or they've won whatever they wanted to win and that's it. But no, I always felt that when my day did come to walk away from Kerry, that I was going to go straight back in with Cremon and play. My mantra is play until my body tells me that I can't do it anymore. And so far, it's been okay. I've had a few wake-up calls, all right, at senior training, because we've a good bunch of young lads after coming through in the last 2 years, and I think there was we had a Kerry minor last year, actually, Kieran Sullivan, really good player, lovely, very strong, very fast, and of course he can play with us this year. He couldn't play with us last year because he was
Of
under
course,
17.
yeah.
But so I think in one of his first training sessions with the club this year, he he didn't have any respect for seniority anyway, and he blew me out over the sideline, nearly drove me in over the fence on the side of the. And I said to myself, Jesus, maybe it's about time I started thinking of walking away from this. But I drove down in the car after, and I was thinking, no, do you know what? That's great. That's great. That's exactly what you want. And and I've often said this to the young fellas that have come through. It's those guys that are driving me on to keep going, because in a way, from a selfish point of view, Jonathan, I hope that they can drive us to success, because that's why we play. At the end of the day, you want to win something. So hopefully we do. But yeah, I'll keep going as long as I can. And the other side of it is, as I keep saying, we're from a small place. It's not like we have an abundance of numbers or players. So as long as I can keep offering something, I'll keep going. And it's another body of training as far as I'm concerned. And if the day will eventually come where I can't, and you'll miss it when you can't. So I'll just keep going as long as I can.
Well, very good. Well, look, from I suppose your day job as well, I know everything is a little curtailed as we speak, with the restrictions slowly but surely starting to ease off. But the fact that, in your day-to-day business life as well, your personal trainer as well, like, you can't really be giving advice to people, go do it, if you were going to say, no, I'm going to sit on the couch for the evening.
Yeah,
it kind of adds to it, does it?
Yeah, well, I look, I don't think, even if I give up football, I won't, step away from trying to look after myself. And look, I'm a very much, I love the personal training. I love, you just love working with people. Look, I'm a people person. I love working with people, and it has been difficult actually since the COVID came along. I mean, the Zoom sessions are great, don't get me wrong, but they just lack that, that personal touch. But I'm a big believer in small little changes can make a big difference. I mean, you love to see somebody improving and reaching their goals, but you also have to let people know that to reach those goals, you don't have to turn into an absolute fanatic about it. You know what I mean? You can get to where you want to be slowly but surely. I think people sometimes go over the top when it comes to getting fit and running and trying to be in impeccable shape, whereas sometimes you just have to take it, you have to believe in the process and follow it nice and slowly. And I don't think when I do retire that I'll ever stop not looking after the body, but at the same time, it's very important that you don't get obsessed with this type of stuff. I see some people coming to me and they want results yesterday. Do you get me?
Absolutely.
And you're trying to hold people back and say, look, this isn't going to happen overnight. But when you do get to that place, and it's a journey, you're with them on a journey. Like you have everyone from girls who are wanting to lose pounds to fit into their wedding dress. You have people who just have let themselves go over the years because they're in desk jobs, or they just they've had busy personal lives with families, and they just maybe forgot about themselves a little bit. So you have everyone coming in the door. And most recently, I suppose, maybe in the last couple of years, for me, which has been a big bonus, is that you're getting footballers coming to you in their off season. And I mean, the fact that I can stand with them as a personal trainer, but also as a guy who's gone through what they're going through, is a huge bonus for me. So but yeah, it's been tough. We so myself and a mate of mine, Jerry Coffey, we both run two different businesses. So his business is his own, and my business is my own, SOS Personal Training. But we work out of the same unit, if you get me.
Okay.
We came across an old rowing clubhouse, believe it or not too far from here, just outside Killorglin, and through a lot of elbow grease and cleaning and hoovering, and obviously invested a bit of money, we just turned it into it's not state of the art, Jonathan, by any means, but
get results.
It does, and it's a real kind of how would I say? There's a good feeling about the place, actually. You know, it's not falling down around us either. Believe me, it's a fine building, but it's you get in there and you just you know that you're going to sweat and you're going to put in a good hour's work with us, and we don't run it as a normal daily gym. We're not there from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, which suits both of us because we've young families. But basically, if you want to do a session with me, you book me, and I meet you there, and we design your plan, and we design your block of training. It's a real personal. You're getting a real personal one-on-one. We do small group sessions as well. So if you and a mate or 3 or 4 mates wanted to come, we have the room to do sessions like that too. But I'm enjoying it. But since the COVID came along, it's been hard. I've kept maybe a few clients on that wanted to do the Zoom. Doesn't suit everybody. You know, it's difficult with people with families. They, especially working from home and stuff like that, they'd find it hard. But I've been keeping up to date with the Zoom sessions. But look, hopefully, you know, with restrictions easing a little bit, it'll allow us to get back at some stage. Although with social distancing still in place, it's hard to see how our industry, you know, can go forward. But we're hoping that there'll be light at the end of the tunnel at some stage, so we can get back at it.
Well, fingers crossed for you guys, yeah. Because I'd imagine owning a business is probably similar to your I suppose your mental career through intercounty levels as well. It's the same, a lot of similar pressures involved, particularly when you're doing such a personal service where you are, you know, you also working. You can give examples from, you know, you even going back to the silly example of you've been told you need to do an extra bit of running from your minor trainer. You can give insights. You've been there, done that. You've won a lot of battles and wars over the way. You don't get to play as many high profile games as you did without being streetwise to come around. So do you feel like your intercounty career is a big help to you in this environment?
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. You especially when you're working with the footballers, obviously, but you know, you're Joe Soap on the street as well. You know, you know, the thing about a personal trainer, Jonathan, is we can all go and train. Listen, you can all go and train on your own, and you can get a program, and you can do X, Y, and Z. But I think a lot of people out there, and that's where we come in as trainers, is the motivation, you know, and having that person, as I said, on the journey with you, who's there next to you. And you know, sometimes as a personal trainer, you become way more than just a trainer. You become a psychologist nearly, you know, because that person could have came straight from work and might have put down an awful day at work, or something might have happened, and they might unload onto you of what's happened. And you know, they might be giving out about a workmate in the middle of trying to get their 8 bench presses done. Do you know what I mean? And you're trying to, you know, balance all that. But it can be great fun at times. But particularly with the footballers, you know, I could be working with a footballer on a Monday morning who came in after playing a stinker the day before. Do you know what I mean? And the last thing he wants to hear about is a weight or a lunge or a squat. You know what I mean? So you're there for them, and you know, Jesus, I played many a stinker, you know, so you're just basically trying to get them through that and say, listen, the beauty about football is that there's a game again next week, you know, or any little nugget at all you can give them just to up them for the session. And what your aim is, that by the time they're finished with you after the 45 minutes or the hour, that they walk out the door in a better place. That's all you're trying to do. That can be hard, but you know, it's part of the role that you play, and I enjoy that part of it, actually. Of course, then you have the guy that's after kicking 10 points the day before, and he nearly tell you how to run the session himself, you know. But yeah, no, it's good. I enjoy it. You know, it was a complete. I worked in the bank for 13 years, you know, so when I decided to change tack and I took redundancy back in 2013, our first son had been born. You know, I left my job just as our first son had arrived.
That was good timing, wasn't it? So
yeah, well,
you broke your ankle the week before your wedding.
Yes,
and now you did this after the first son.
Yeah, I know.
Quite a
People
picture.
were looking at me. What was I doing? I gave up a nice pensionable job to go off out my own. But I don't regret it. I don't regret it because I didn't see myself sitting at a desk filling out mortgage applications. It was fine while I was there, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed my time with the Bank of Ireland, worked in Killarney for the majority of my career there, and I must say, brilliant company to work for, and really, really supported me in my football career. Anything I ever needed for them, be it time off for challenge games or switching my holidays around to go on training camps, they were very, very obliging. But it came to a stage where I wasn't happy, and I was coming home to Mary here in the evening times, and I wasn't happy. And she just said one evening, "What do you want to do?" And I said, I just want to do something in the fitness industry. I just feel that's where my future is. And they were giving out redundancies at the time. I took it, and Ryan was born in December of 2012. I left the bank in January 2013, and I was up and running as SOS personal training the following October after doing my course. And listen, it's not that I'm this top well-known trainer. I have a nice little client base that adds in now and again and loses a few now and again for different reasons, but it's what I enjoy doing. And there's been very few evenings where I've come home or came back from training 3 or 4 people in a row to Mary in bad form. So I think that really sums it up, really.
That helps, doesn't it? I'd like to dig a bit more into I suppose, your playing days with Kerry from the senior level. Like you've touched a little bit on it there in terms of your work at the bank being so flexible with you and all that. How I suppose you probably noticed it develop on through your career as well. It probably got more and more extreme. How difficult is it to be a full-time intercounty footballer, which you probably more than likely are, to juggle that with family or relationships and work as well? It seems like it's something that got more difficult over the years.
Yeah. Well, family wasn't an issue for me because I didn't have kids when I was playing. And to be honest with you, I scratch my head sometimes. There was nobody in our setup, I think, that had children. Maybe a few of the older fellas were just having their first kid when they were retiring, But I looked there at somebody like Kieran Donaghy, who won the All-Ireland in 14, played in 15, and he had a kid, Declan O'Sullivan had young children at home when he was coming to, in that last year in 14. I don't know how they did it, to be honest with you, Jonathan, because I left in 09. Or sorry, I retired after the 09 All Ireland, but I actually went back in. Jack O'Connor was in charge, and going back to the club setup in Kerry, I had a good county championship campaign with Mid Kerry in 2011, and Jack asked me back in for the start of the league in 2012. And if I have any regrets, it was actually going back in. I had just joined the Kerry minor team as a selector under Mickey Ned O'Sullivan, and John O'Keefe was there. And I was enjoying it. And when Jack rang for me to come back into the seniors, I deliberated a lot about it, and I eventually ended up going back in. So I had to give up my minor role, which actually, as luck would have it, was taken by Peter Keane, who was obviously the current senior manager, but had a great run with the minors as manager himself. And if I had any regret, it was doing it because I went back in. I played the first few league games. Actually, we played Dublin and we played Armagh. It was okay. I didn't feel I was, out. I didn't look out of place. I did okay, but I just felt something. I remember going to dinner after the Armagh game down in a local hotel in Tralee. We played under lights on a Saturday evening, and I was sitting at a table with a bunch of the younger Kerry guys, so I wouldn't have known these fellas really from my time. They were all new into the setup since I had left. And absolutely nothing about the fellas that were sitting at the table with me, but I just felt there and then that it wasn't right. So I remember driving home in the car, and I rang Mary from the hands-free, and I said, no, I've made a mistake here. And in fairness, I rang Jack the next day and explained to him that I just didn't feel that this was for me. And he took it on board, and I walked away from it for good this time. But my point being that I had left in '09, Jonathan, and I had gone back in 2 years later. And even the difference in that 2 years to what was expected of you as a senior intercounty footballer was phenomenal. It was just phenomenal. I mean, the whole setup had changed. I mean, you were doing, so your week was, Monday morning you were doing your gym session before work. Then you'd go to work. Then you might have a stretching session after work. Then the following day you were back into work. Then you had your field session Tuesday. Wednesday morning was your gym session again before work. Stretching again that evening. I mean, it had gone from, and I'm talking about 2009 when we won, to 2 years later. It was such a huge jump from that, and I just couldn't believe it. It was you were gone even more professional. I mean, we were, during that team in the noughties that I was part of. It was all go, but I mean, there was downtime, and there was I won't say it was more relaxed, but there was certainly, definitely, not as much emphasis on the extra bits, if you get me. Whereas when I went back in 11, I was like, this has gone to a whole new level altogether. Even the training itself, the sessions on the field were at an intensity that I'd never experienced before. So for guys trying to maintain families, young families, in the midst of all that, I just don't know how they did it. My only guess is that they must have very understanding wives, and that's it. They just got lucky. But during our time, yeah, it was full on. It was full on. And I think really, Jonathan, what it was is that a lot of it was mental. You could never shut off from it. Do you get me? I'd be sitting at my computer at work, and it could be Tuesday at 4:00, and we could be playing an A versus B game in a couple of hours' time above in the Fitzgerald Stadium. And all you're thinking about is, right, probably, I'm probably going to be, you'd know yourself, am I going to be on the 18th tonight? Maybe not. If I'm on the Bs, who will be marking me? Probably Tomas O'Shea. Right, how am I going to deal with that? What's the best way to get at Tomas, if there is a way to get at Tomas? If the teams are switched around at half time and you're on the A team, what you need to do to, put your hand up and impress. The last thing on your mind is a mortgage application for John and Mary O'Sullivan down the road. Do you know what I mean? So it was a huge mental thing. You just couldn't shut off from it. You'd come home, it would dictate your mood. We hadn't the house built here, so I'd get home, maybe I was still living with my parents, and if you had played a good game or you had a good training session, you'd be straight into the sitting room for a cup of tea with your father and your mother, and you'd be all chat. If you had a stinker, you'd be straight up into your bedroom,
so
and
they knew straight away.
Following morning, exactly. So the mental side of it was massive. The physical side, the training, the looking after yourself, the weight sessions, they were tough, but you just knew they were part and parcel of being an intercounty footballer. I mean, it's not for the good of your health. You do it, you're in there because you love it, but you know what comes with it in terms of, geez, don't get me, I get sick when I think of the winter training sessions and the training camps in Portugal, which I'll touch on in a second, but it was the mental side was massive. You just never shut off from it. But no, just going back to the training camps.
This should be good.
It was a running joke at work. Sean is often because we go and there used to be a break in the league. There still is a break in the league after the first 3 games, or maybe you get a 2-week break. So we usually go for one of those weeks. So which probably was February, March, maybe end of February, start of March. And the girls at work would have the running joke with me, Sean's off on his April holiday or his March holiday,
Yeah.
And my God, it was the last thing, it was the last thing from a holiday. It was tough going. Now it was brilliant because, I look at the Premier League players there and their training sessions, when they talk about coming in to do a morning session and an afternoon session, we got to live like a Premier League player for a week. You had your own little villa, you had your the training pitches. So you might do a morning running session, you'd have an afternoon weight session, and you'd have an evening football session. It was fantastic. But I mean, we weren't sitting around on deck chairs, topping up our tents,
Reading books,
drinking pina coladas, But great times. Training was tough, but we knew what we signed up for, and I suppose when you walk away from the end of your career with a couple of All-Irelands or whatever, fellas have walked away with 4 or 5 medals, All-Stars, then it's easy to look back and say, geez, it was worth every minute of it. But you mentioned counties like Clare, Longford, Leitrim. Again, no disrespect to those counties, just off the top of my head. When you have a guy putting in the same amount as you, and they walk away at the end of the season with nothing, and probably only get to play a game in the provincial championship and maybe 1-2 games in the back door if they're lucky, and they walk away with nothing, yet they've put in as much effort, that's when you really ask yourself questions, and what am I doing this for? We were, I suppose, by the grace of God, lucky we were part of a Kerry team that, got to 7 All-Ireland finals in a row. Just unprecedented, really, but we all just happened to come along at the same time, and that was it, the look of the draw, in a way, I suppose, Jonathan.
Well, true, but yeah, look, you came through in what was, looking back on, it seems a bit unique in a way, in the fact that obviously there was the huge Kerry golden generation, for want of a better word there, like some of the players and even some of the forwards, they just literally roll off the tongue in terms of the quality that was on show. But football, that coincided with, for me, kind of I suppose the emerge really of Ulster, the teams in Ulster, and the effect that they had on what is now modern Gaelic football. I suppose it came to the head really in that infamous game against Tyrone, where it was almost the culture changes came together and smacked right in the middle, and it led to a lot of conversation straight up. So you on the one hand you had the golden generation, on the other hand you had to adapt to this new kind of way of playing, for want of a better word. It must have been a strange time to be involved with. Like you talk about the 2 years, how training had increased too much, but particularly your role as a half forward, that changed a lot over the years as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it was something that certainly, like I was on the team in 02 and 03 as a half forward, and then in 04 Jack O'Connor came in, and he was obviously looking in from the outside for those couple of years and saw that, well, maybe Kerry needed to change their tack a little bit. And, I probably suffered in a way, in that I was more of a stylish,
explosive wing forward.
Explosive wing forward, exactly, that loved going forward, and maybe to my own detriment, didn't do a whole pile in didn't do a whole pile in the defensive side of the game, maybe, or the in around the engine room of the game, So obviously Jack came in 04, and he saw what Tyrone had done to us in 2003. We lost the All-Ireland final to Armagh in 02, but I don't think that was down to the physical side of it. I just, that's one that really, really raggles with me. I mean, we were 4 points up at half time, and I wouldn't say we were in control, but we were in a good place. I honestly don't know what happened to us in that second half, but fair play to Armagh. They drove on. They got
momentum, wasn't it? I remember like Ronan Carr,
that's right,
hitting a massive score from out. I think he was up 45. Right. I think he was a bad foot, if I remember rightly at the time.
That's right. Yeah.
They had those moments of, while it was, I suppose, the start of the defensive transition, I always used to be, that team fascinated me, that Joe Kernan team, the fact they would drop one back and play with the 7, play McGeeney as a sweeper, and then pretty much a 2-on-2 with the long diagonal balls going in. But it was still a relatively attacking system. I don't think you can blame the system for your defeat that day, whereas Tyrone took it to a hell of a lot new levels that found it really, really difficult. Like that infamous clip, I think we've all seen a million times. I think it's on Brosnan is pretty much in front of the I think it's front of the Hogan he is, and there's about 6 lads around him, and
that's right, yeah,
just tries to bull through and can't, and
the
big roar, and we spoke about momentum, and that must have been a strange game to be involved in.
It was, and it was a real eye opener. But the problem was, it was happening in real time. It's not like and look, it's not like we didn't do any preparation on Tyrone. We knew what they were going to come with, but it was just until it was in your face and the intensity of it, and you had no time to really react. But yeah, so Jack came in 04 and he said, look, we're either going to have to change something here or we're going to get left behind. And he went for, especially around the middle of the field, he went for the type of guy who is going to just work his socks off in terms of breaking ball, tracking back, getting in fellas' faces, namely the likes of Paul Galvin. Liam Hassett, and unfortunately that left me on the outside looking in. I got game time here and there, but I just wasn't in the picture in terms of starting in 04, so yeah, that was tough. That was tough to take, but I was never one to throw the prams out of the cot. I was very fortunate that I was in with Kerry and I was trying to help as much as possible. So even though any time I wasn't starting and knew I wasn't probably going to see game time, I tried not to leave it affect me in terms in training. I always tried to go in there positive with a pep in my step and just try and do something during training that the management might say, fair play, well done tonight, even if I knew deep down it wasn't going to have a real bearing when they sat down to pick the first 15, because, and I think that was a lot of why Kerry was successful in that period. You had, no matter what number you were on the panel, you just wanted to come in and make sure that you were doing something for the cause, and sulking was going to get you nowhere. And it wasn't going to have a good effect on the group. So I think a lot of guys that would have been down, say, in numbers 21, 22, 23 on match day still approach the match as if, I could be needed at some stage, and I think that really reflected then on the first 15, because they knew that, there was Sean O'Sullivan wasn't over sulking in the corner because he wasn't playing. He'll be ready to go if things aren't going right for me. And I think that was a huge thing that drove us on in that time, But certainly the game changed an awful lot. But the thing about it was that any good team will adapt, and we adapted. And okay, Tyrone had our number for a couple of years, but we still bounced back and still ended up getting to finals and winning our fair share of them.
Yeah, no, you did, and I suppose that transition really under Jack O'Connor really kind of brought you back onto the next level, where you did adapt, you changed things quite a lot to fit. Been curious, how did that I suppose change in philosophy go down in Kerry? Was because I always strike as Kerry as the the home of traditional football. You play, I suppose, similar to back home in Galway as well. Was that a challenge, or like the guys on the street talking, or probably didn't pay much attention to that at the same time?
No, we didn't. I mean, when you're in that bubble, Jonathan, you're not. I used to go out for my lunch break in Killarney from work, and of course you'd have the guy meeting you on the street saying,
kick it in.
Yeah, kick it in. You should be moving the ball a lot faster, and you'd agree with him and walk on. And you'd meet a fella around the other corner who's telling you should be doing something else. So it didn't affect us once we knew within the group what we were trying to achieve. And even if you look back, it's not like we went ultra defensive. I mean, you couldn't go defensive. There was times in a game where you needed to shut up shop and you needed to protect your full back line or your half back line or whatever. But I mean, how could you go defensive when you have, in my opinion, the best forward I've ever played with in Colin Cooper in one corner, Johnny Crowley, Dara Kineda, Paul Galvin's, Liam Hassett's, these guys, Declan O'Sullivan's. There's no way you could play an overly defensive game when you had those guys, and even if you go back through the All-Ireland finals that we would have lost, we were still putting up good scores, it's just we were unlucky on the day. I think the 08 one, like I'm not going to sit here and take away from Tyrone's All-Irelands, because you win an All-Ireland, you win it fair and square, in my opinion. But I definitely think the 08 one was it was in the bad. I know Tyrone ended up running out, maybe was it 5-point winners in the end. I think Sean Kavanagh kicked a few beauties towards the end, but if you go back earlier in that game, Pascal McConnell makes a great save from Declan. I mean, Declan's going through. It's going to nestle in the corner. I'll never forget. I was warming up actually, and I'm thinking, this is it. This goes in the back of the net. We're going to win here. And he tips it around the post. You know, that's small little margins. Like, and you know, Tyrone pushed on and ended up winning. You know, winning by 4 or 5 points in the end, which was deserved. But small things in games can change them. You know. So by no means were we overawed by Tyrone or defensive systems. I think just in 03, 05 and 08, they beat us on the day, and how they went about it was their business. But, you know, bar 03 where they went overly defensive, I don't think there was much in either game. If you look back on the 05 final, which I wasn't involved in, I was travelling that year, but you know, the 08, which I was involved in, there wasn't much in those games when you tear them, when you actually sit down and analyze them. Like, you know, there was very, very little between those teams. And I think if you talk to any of the players from those respective teams now, be it from Tyrone or Kerry, they'd agree with you that there wasn't much in it on those days, you know.
I guess the Toronto rivalry is probably highlighted a lot because it was the culture shock. But what you were kind of at the start, I suppose, at the end of your career then, was kind of coming alongside the rise of what we now know as, I suppose, modern day Dublin. You had some epic battles yourself before you called it a day.
You know, I didn't come across Dublin an awful lot towards
punch points.
Yeah. Well, 07 was a humdinger of a game actually, because we were in pretty much in decent control of that game, going down the stretch. And I remember coming on, Pat O'Shea was our trainer, manager at the time, and we were under a bit of pressure. And he actually said to me, and people don't believe me when I say this, this is no word of a lie. And I often said to Pat after, I might ask him for the lotto numbers, because he said to me, get on the ball. We need a score, whatever it may be, even if it's a punched point, he said. And that's genuinely. And I just remember thinking at the time, why did he say that? You know, but I came on, and anyway, I came into a game where all of a sudden Dublin we couldn't get out of our own half, and Dublin were pegging us back, and we managed to, for once, send Stephen Cluxton down a cul-de-sac. I don't know why. I don't know, could he even answer himself to this day why he decided to go on a solo jaunt out the field. When we put him under pressure and we turned it over, and it ended up in my arms, and I punched it over the bar. So I don't know, premonition by Pat, but an excellent coach actually, Pat, very good coach. So that would have been 07. And then the only other time I met Dublin and I only came on as a sub again late in the game was the startled earwigs game that Pat Gilroy described it as, where we were given no chance. Yeah, we were given no chance going up in 09. We should have been knocked out of the championship by Sligo, first of all, in Tralee, and Antrim put us to the pin of our colours in Tullamore. And we were coming down on the train from Tullamore, and we heard we got Dublin and Croke Park, and it's as if you flicked the light switch. It was straight away we were going to Croke Park it was the bank holiday Monday, actually, we played them. And it was all we needed. You could sense in the carriage that day in the train, it was all we needed. And we weren't given a chance going up against the Dubs. And sure, I think the Gooch scored a goal after 17 seconds or something.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was remarkable, that game.
Oh, it was. I often, and I even tell young fellas now, if I'm involved with a team, guys that aren't playing, if you're a sub, I said, don't be a sub, you know, and I'm sure it's been said to you as well in your playing days, don't be a sub, don't be a spectator, you know, be ready to go, you know, don't just sit on the bench, you're part of it was the one day actually that I just let myself drift off, because it was a sensational performance. Like, it was, you know, to be even there to watch it and to be part of it. And I came on for the last 10 minutes, it was nice, but to watch Gooch in full flight, Darren O'Sullivan, Mike McCarthy had came back into the setup, Paul Galvin, you know, these guys, Declan, guys at the top of their game, just, you know, tearing Dublin to shreds above in their front of the hill. You know, it was nice. It was nice, yeah. But so that was the only 2 times really I came across Dublin. But obviously they've gone on from strength to strength, and yeah, it's hard to see. It's hard to see where their dominance is going to end. But look, we have to keep trying, I suppose. You know.
Yeah, well, look, you look back on the finals from last year, they were both quite close game. At the end of the day, it's almost defined really, the ties defined really by that moment of magic where they just kind of caught you a little bit slow perhaps off the throw-in and scored a wonder goal.
The over-carrying goal, is it, Jonathan? Is that the one you're talking about?
I was wondering how long it would take to be picked up. It was it happened quickly, put it that way.
It happened fast, yeah. It happened fast. No, it was one of those things where, well, first of all, I think we'd look back at the drawn game as one we left behind us, you know. You know, even watching it back now as a supporter, you know, down the stretch of the game, we made silly decisions, turnovers that if we had just retained possession of the ball, we were All-Ireland champions, you know, or just made better decisions. You know, in football, decision-making, Jonathan, it's a game of decision-making, and whoever makes the better decisions wins the game. It's as simple as that. And unfortunately, whether it was down to just tiredness or the occasion or lack of experience, maybe in some cases, we just didn't do enough in the drawn game to see it out. And, you know, going into the replay, we were quite hopeful that, you know, we could go again. But yeah, that was a key moment. All right after halftime, of course. You know, they often say that the period before halftime and after halftime is crucial in a game. And, you know, for Dublin, you know, we had pegged them back. I think it was level at halftime, wasn't it? Was it level?
I think it was. It was quite close if it wasn't level.
It was close anyway, yeah. No, I think it was a draw game. And, you know, the first score was a goal. Great finish by Murchan. And the last thing you want to give Dublin is that fire, that little bit of fire right after halftime, you know. And after that, Kerry just were on their heels a little bit, and they were chasing the game. And, you know, you got to hand it to Dublin. They saw it through. But great experience for our fellas. 2 All-Irelands. You know, I particularly think of David Clifford. You know, I had the pleasure of coaching David for 3 years with a development squad down here, and you know, everyone doesn't doubt his ability and so on. But I suppose in his first All-Ireland, you know, things didn't really go brilliantly for him in the drawn game. And I remember talking to my family after, and they were going on about David, you know, and I said, well, look, he has his All-Ireland played now. You know, he's got that first All-Ireland out of the way, you know, and now he can look forward to the replay without any of that baggage or any of those hang-ups about your first All-Ireland, etc. And sure, he had a superb game in the replay. I mean, he kicked points for fun. So, you know, for him to get those 2 All-Irelands in his first full year as a senior, that'll bring him on no end. And, you know, the other young guys, Sean Shea, these guys playing in their first All-Irelands, it's out of the way now, and they don't have to worry about playing in their first All-Ireland anymore, if you get me. They can drive on. And that's where Dublin got over the line. A lot of times, you know, they had guys, you know, they've gone back to the well all the time. They're getting to these big games and playing these big games, and that all stands to a young fella, and he brings.
Yeah, so obviously you learned a lot from both your time. You've talked about the long, I suppose, your career and how the game has changed and how you've had to change and how you've seen different managers, different styles. You seem like you're very cued in. Anytime I've seen you talk, you know, on the tactical side of the game and how the game works, and then your personal training side as well, about coaching not just the physical body but the mind and the experience. So you've been involved in development camps. You seem to really admire and find and like the coaching side of the game as well, do you?
Yeah, I do. I don't think when I came out of the game, the inter-county setup, I never envisaged myself going straight into coaching. I didn't. You know, I thought about it, that it would come maybe later down the line, but I didn't envisage getting straight into it. But around the time I finished up, the county board were kind of revamping the development squad system in the county. Ex-player Donald Daly, actually, who had many a good battle with Galway, Jonathan, down through the years. Donald was kind of responsible for overseeing the whole I suppose just the revamp of it, really. I mean, the development squad system was always there, but it wasn't, I suppose it wasn't taken overly seriously, and the results from it weren't visible. Do you know what I mean? There was no real, in game to it. So he went about just revamping it, and his big thing was trying to get ex-players back involved. So he asked me would I get involved. So basically, to cut a long story short, the county is split in two when it comes to development squads. You have Kerry South and Kerry North, and it starts from under 14 up to under 16. So you're basically trying to develop a pool of players who a Kerry minor manager will be able to pick from when he takes up his role. Not necessarily that you won't make the Kerry minors if you're not in a development squad, but it's just a group of players who have come through a system and are there. It's a bit like in England with your youth academy, So he asked me to get involved, and I did. And I stayed. I did 3 years, first of all, and with the same group. So I brought them from 14 to 16. So it would have involved the David Cliffords of the world, Michael Potts, guys like this who are currently inside in the senior setup. Great guys. So when I finished winning it under 16, I stayed at 16, and I just brought the next few levels through as well. So I did about 7 years altogether. But definitely, I think I found my calling in terms of working with young players, especially. They're like a sponge, really, Jonathan. They're mad for information. They're mad on how to improve. And it's very, very easy to motivate them, because all you have to show them is that, and let them know is that if they want to commit, and if they want to improve, and if they want to work hard on their game, that they could be a Kerry minor. And I suppose it was no coincidence that after Donal and his team and the county board revamped the squads, along with the great work that was being done in the schools in Kerry and the clubs, of course, that we broke that famine and won the All Ireland in the minor All Ireland in 14, and obviously went on to win four more after that, and five minors in a row.
5 in a row, yeah.
Yeah, and it was. Listen, it's not just down to development squads, and I'm not sitting here taking responsibility for any of that. But what the development squad did was it prepared these young guys for, where the next step of their career was going, and it brought the level of training up a little bit from what they were receiving in the clubs and the schools. And they were in there with like-minded 14, 15, 16-year-olds who wanted to be a Kerry minor. And you got to live like an inter-county footballer. Basically, our season goes from January to July. You're training once a week at the start, and it goes to 2 as you get near competition. And you're just working with them. But it's very well thought out by the county board. I mean, at 14, it's all skill-based. You're just trying to improve these guys' skills. The competition, at the end of the day, is just a reward for the work they've done. At 15, you're going more into decision making, what to do in certain situations. So you're bringing the skills that they had at 14 into decision making. And then at 16, you can get a little bit more, as you mentioned earlier on, you can get a little bit more tactical, and you're very much then in conversation with the Kerry minor manager of the time, because more often than not, that manager will be picking from those under 16s in his next year. So you want to develop a certain type of system that when these guys walk into a Kerry minor setup, that they know what that minor manager expects and what he wants and the way he wants to play. So there's a lot of open communication between the managers below you and above you, because at the end of the day, you're all working towards the one goal, and that's to produce Kerry footballers. And a big thing I also noticed was they changed the emphasis on the strength and conditioning. And look, I know a lot of people don't like talking about strength and conditioning when it comes to young players, 14, 15, 16. I'm not saying we had these guys inside in gyms, Jonathan, trying to bench press 150 kgs. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. They're very tailored to the age and to the ability of the young guys, and it's all body weight until you get to 16. But it certainly stood out for me in terms of watching them develop in front of your eyes. And it was great for me to be able to go up to Croke Park on All Ireland final day and see these guys that you spend so much time with win an All-Ireland minor medal, you know, and I think they beat Galway in one final, did they? Would I be?
No, that definitely didn't happen.
But you know,
Yeah.
I remember sitting up, and obviously you're in early because the minor game is on early, and I was sitting. There was nobody around me except two other guys that had been on the management team with me, and we're watching these fellas who had come through our hands do it on the biggest day of their life so far, you know, and it gave me great satisfaction that you had a small part to play in it. Do you know what I mean? Along with their parents, their club trainers, their school trainers, the Kerry minor management who brought them to another level. But you played some part in it. And I'm not with the squads anymore now because I felt I did 7 years there. And for myself, you needed to go away and do something else. But I really feel that I've played my small part in those guys going on and achieving an All-Ireland minor medal, and hopefully more down the line.
I know you're going to be too modest to claim your reward, but you obviously did a buckload of work, and while there is a very good structure in place there, can you compare the two, being that your involvement in those minor wins compared to winning the medal yourself on senior level, or is it a different type of satisfaction?
It's different. It's different. Yeah, it's very different. It's yeah, it's very different. Like obviously, you as a player, you're part of the team, obviously, and you're part of the squad. But and listen, any player that doesn't say this is lying to you. It's a selfish thing as well. You know,
of course it is.
You've won your All Ireland, like, you know, and you've done it. You've put in the hard yards, you know. But you know, obviously, you know, I'm a big Liverpool fan. But I saw I think BT Sport did something on the Champions League, or Jurgen Klopp, last night. And I thought he said a lovely thing about the night they won the Champions League against Spurs. And he said it's for him, when he lifted the cup, it was great. He knew his feelings when he lifted the trophy himself. But it was what really made it for him was watching his players lift the cup. You know, that's where he got his satisfaction. You know, watching his players celebrate with the trophy, watching Jordan Henderson run over to his father, watching, you know, Alison Becker calling his pregnant wife on the iPhone after. And for me, anytime those players, you know, when I saw them lifting their minor All-Ireland, or when we won our Munster Championship competition in July and I saw these young fellas jumping around the place with a cup, that's the satisfaction you get out of it, because you've helped them get there. When they hand the cup to me, it's great. You lift it and you say, yeah, that was great. That's a nice feeling. But you actually feel way better watching them celebrate. That's the best way I can describe it, you know.
Oh, very good. Well, listen, Sean, I'll let you go. You've been an absolute pleasure with your time. Give a shout out again to the ranch, your own business there. We'll drop a link into it here afterwards as well.
Yeah, so I'm on the way over there now, actually, just to catch up with with Jerry, and I'll do a little video for you, Jonathan, just to show you around the premises. But so it's SOS Personal Training. So I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and really it's a real personal service. It's a one-on-one or small groups, and look, hopefully when everything blows over, which will soon, I can get back at it and get out there. But I appreciate you talking to me today, and thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
No, absolute pleasure. We'll let you go. Thank you so much again. I still haven't forgiven you for that goal in 0-2, by the way, but it was a good finish.
And you never even talked about it.
No, do you think there was a great goal that scored that day, wasn't it? Michael Dolan earlier on in the game.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that was a great goal. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks
no worries, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Sean. Look after yourself, and we'll chat to you soon.
Care.
All the best.
Okay.
Hi guys, Sean Sullivan from SOS Personal Training here. Just a quick video to follow on from Jonathan's chat earlier. This is where the magic happens here in the gym. It's our little studio where we train our clients. Just finished a little session there myself. So again, thanks to Jonathan for the chat earlier on, really enjoyed it. And any queries, you can find SOS Personal Training on all the social media platforms. So looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks guys.